Hey, this is Sean, the artist behind SeanSean.co, and I do specials on eBay. Today I'm going to review Nobody's Fool. So this is a, classic romantic comedy, right? So there's obviously a romance side and then there's a comedy side. This film follows a very, standard template for romantic comedy. So any rom-com I can't say these words. In any of those type of films, you guys have like two characters meet, it's not an exact fit, they don't like each other, or one doesn't like one, they're kind of struggle to get together, there might be another interest, and then that goes to challenge and then it resolves itself. So that's following that classic formula here, where Danica she's this high level ad executive in New York City. She has a really good job, looks like she's really made it. That's may or may not be accurate in the sense that everyone at the ad level at the bottom, they're making low money, like under $50,000. It's only once you make director level and higher, then you get paid real money, like 125, 130. Obviously, from someone coming from nothing, that seems like a lot of money, but in New York City, that would be like peanuts. So I think they're a little bit overstating how successful you could be in an ad agency, but it's fine, just roll with it, right? So that's kind of fun. So they build up Danica's character. She's this ad manager. She's dating this guy, but it's only an online thing. And she has this ex-boyfriend who they were planning to get married and then dumped her at the last second. So you're really thinking maybe they'll get back to this plot point. They touch on it twice. It might have been something more to explore there, I think, as far as, the jealousy, the bitterness. And they do touch on it a little bit, but I think there could have been a little bit more development of those side characters to really kind of give more meat to the main characters, but they function as they function. He's obviously this dippy guy who just dumps her to the last second, dates this other girl, and is getting married, so she's totally bitter. And then she's fallen for this guy online. Now, the guy online, she's never met. He works on an oil rig. So here's where it gets a little weird, because if you work in an oil rig, if you've seen other oil rig movies, those guys, it's a really dirty job. The guy she presents comes off clean. I mean, obviously you're not going to be dirty after work on your off hours, but these guys, they're really rough. They're really blue collar style workers. So he's coming off it. So that's my crazy cat. He's scratching all our moving boxes, like destroying them all. Trouble, get off there. He plays this oil rig guy, and he's a smooth character. And oil rig, unless you're really high up, you're not going to be sophisticated. You're going to be, like I said, it's a blue collar style work. So again, this character, as a backstory, kind of doesn't make sense. You do make really good money on oil rig, but you'd be a lot more rougher on the edges, way more blue collar, kind of, has a feel like a cop or a fireman, or these kind of really tried and true careers. It's like that, unless you're really high up. And again, he says he works in the oil rig, so you're assuming he's not like a VP in a corporate office, which if he was a VP of a corporate office, that would make sense. So they're kind of overselling him as this really sophisticated guy. I mean, he might be sophisticated in his personal life, who knows, but I think he'd be a little bit rougher around the edges. This character Danica, who's in love with this Charlie, this oil rig guy who she's never met. So her sister gets out of jail, who plays Tiffany Haddish plays Tanya, and she's like really rough on the edges. That's a really fun character. So then you get the comedian side of the romantic comedy, and obviously Tiffany Haddish is really spectacular in her type of role, and so that has a nice balance between Danica, sophisticated, career oriented, smart, she went to school, and then Tanya's character is just off the wall, went to prison, just trying to cut any corners as possible, which is a convict or people that end up in jail think they think, hey, I can just shortcut through life, get a little weed here, smoke a little drugs here. What kind of quick scam can I pull, right? My mom was a scam artist, so I definitely know that she wasn't big enough that she went to jail, but definitely she scammed a lot of people, almost scammed herself. So I kind of get that mentality, so it's pretty interesting. So I think, Tiffany obviously knocks it out of the park with the comedy, and even though she's the main character in the movie, she's really on the side within the story, so it's a little bit strange, but it works fine. I think she plays a really solid. And then you got to see if the other guys who are the leads. So the leads are Frank and Charlie. So Frank is this guy that works at a coffee shop, and Danica's not really interested in him at all, but he's always giving her her rose, giving her free coffee, letting her cut in line, and so he's obviously interested in her. And her sister Tanya figures that out right away. It's like, dude, why didn't you go after this guy? And she's like, no. And then she investigates a little bit. She's not really interested in the guy. And then it turns out he's an ex-comic. And that was just definitely not. She has this fixed list, which is really funny because I had a list. All the qualities I wanted on my list were in my wife. So don't believe the story. The list works. The list totally works, dude. get a list, date people only on the list, throw them out to make sure it's not too crazy. Like I wouldn't put income on there necessarily, but earning potential really. But yeah, you can have a list. Like I had brunette, smart, intellectual, studious, kind of liberal art style, and that was all checked on my boxes at the time. So that list does work. So you just have to make sure it's reasonable. Like I've had other people and they're like, yeah, they have to make 6 figures and 6-pack and da-da-da, and it's like, yeah, 6-pack or just healthy, you know, there's a little different fit. It's more reasonable. Just don't go like 6 figures. They might make like say 80K and they're a really nice person, so, and you throw them out for a 20K difference. So you gotta make reasonable on your list. So our Danica has this really unrealistic list, like 6 figures, good looking, good in bed, and those are fine, those are generic. But then the 6 figures, probably not super realistic. Although she's making good money herself, so it's not unreasonable. But the older you get as a woman, you're probably not going to be able to fish as many high quality men. So Frank has to really play off this role as the coffee shop nice guy that she's not interested in, which I think he works pretty well. Then you also have Charlie, who comes in late in the movie, who's this romantic lead. In the middle of the story, you know, they find out that she's been catfished by this guy Charlie, and that's really funny because then you see Chris Rock pop up as the catfisher. And Chris Rock is awesome, so that was a really fun tie-in, totally surprising. I didn't expect to see Chris Rock, and that was really pretty fun. He basically plays himself, a little softer on the edges than what he plays in his stand-up, but it was definitely pretty fun. You know, eventually she ends up dating Frank and going back between Frank and Charlie and works their way out. And in the end, they had this really nice, fun sequence where you think it's a wedding, but it turns out to be something else. So that's, I won't say any, but it's a pretty funny move by Tiffany Haddish, you know, tie up the very final of the film, which is, it's pretty funny, I would say. So, you know, the comedy side works really well. The romantic side works okay. It's very formulaic, I would say. Nothing too out of the box, but again, it's a romantic comedy. You know, they're corporate jobs, and, you know, this guy's down and out, running a coffee shop. So I like the backstory to him because he went to prison and then he's kind of turning around his life, bought his own shop. He really just figured out the mindset, and then he kind of stayed away with all the negative people and was able to turn his life around. So that has a really kind of interesting character, I would say. Yeah, I think they do okay. And they have kind of some fun politics. Danica at work, and she's like this up and coming, she's almost going to be the first VP, black VP of this firm, so she's breaking a glass ceiling, so she's a little excited about that, but she has to play the game with all these fake people at work, which all of us has to play. It doesn't matter if they're white or black or Puerto Rican or whatever, right? You know, you always have to suck up to whoever's in power. So she has this big issue of dealing with all these annoying executives, right, that are, you know, the traditional power holders of that type, which are, you know, white women. And you see that still in the ad agency, I would say, today. Yeah, I think overall it was a pretty fun film. It's a formulaic style film, so, you know, you expect formula with this style of film. So I usually don't go to romantic comedies because my wife doesn't like to go. I like comedies, so I went there for the comedy side, and it definitely delivers on the comedy side. The romance, it's okay. Again, it's formula. It's from a guy's standpoint, you're like, okay, whatever, you know. I'd rather like action or singing. But anyway, I think it's a pretty fun film. And it's interesting, if you look at Tiffany Haddish, she's come up with 3 movies this year. She has Night School, she had The Oath, and then she had this film. And it's interesting because you get into the quandary where you ask yourself, if you're up and coming as like a comedian, you know, you're from a minority group, are you stuck playing minority roles, or do you cross that line, right? So we saw, for example, with Kevin Hart, he was able to really cross the line, and he worked with The Rock and everything, and it works. Say in Jumanji, right? Or he played another comedy, I can't remember, with The Rock. But anyway, it kind of works. This one, she played with The Oath. I didn't go see it. It just seemed like the marketing was crap on that film. I don't know if it was actually bad, but, you know, it made these really awkward kind of semi-racist jokes, which I guess with the Trump administration, it works. But would a black girl date a guy who's racially insensitive? It's like, the bare marketing, the idea doesn't make sense to me, so I didn't want to see that movie because of that. It just feels very cringy, and so I didn't have any interest in that. Night School felt pretty authentic. It had a wide range of characters, you know, mostly minorities, but it was fun, you know. It kind of had that ring of, you want to go back to school and get your degree, and Kevin Hart can't make it to save his life. So that was a really good role, and it, you know, shows the versatility of Tiffany Haddish, which, you know, since she grew up in foster care system, she has this wide range of characters, which I can relate to. I didn't grow up in foster care, but I moved several times, lost all my friends over and over and over again. And sometimes I lived in a rich neighborhood, poor neighborhood, and, you know, just wherever you live, people perceive you completely different. I lived in a really, you know, half black, half white neighborhood, so I got that kind of feel. And then later I moved to a different neighborhood, and then I would go back and connect with some of my black friends, and they would just kind of, you know, they went to college college and they kind of stonewalled me, and I was like, dude, we were friends back in high school. So you know, sometimes racism unfortunately cuts both ways. You know, people want to keep up appearances. So yeah, that kind of stuff happens. You know, and that goes both ways. Oh, so I was gonna say, you know, I think Night School worked really well for Tiffany Haddish. This film works pretty well for Tiffany Haddish. The Oath, it just seemed cringy. So, but you're like, you know, maybe I just didn't want to see it. So you know, you can't judge a film just on the marketing. The marketing could totally suck and the film's fine. But it just seemed like it was badly shot from that. Just the idea of like this culturally insensitive guys dating a black woman. You're like, if you're dating across cultures, you know, minority groups within the US, you're going to be more sensitive to that, I would say. You might make some jokes, but it would be, I mean, you do have people that kind of slide into dangerous territory and they don't realize it. So it didn't seem to work for me. Maybe I'll see it on DVD later. So I don't know what the quality of that is, but you know, it's really nice that she's playing a lot of different roles. You know, I was saying I was moving around, and that gave me a lot of, you know, experiences, you know, rich to poor, living in different countries. And there you're really seen differently. You're, like in Poland, I was an extreme minority. I was still white, so you pass there, you don't have the skin color issue, but you did have the sense I had braces on, and no one in the country had braces, so I was literally like a freak show. The real sense of, I don't know, you're just really hyper aware of your surroundings. Man, what are people gonna think about me? Because sometimes people are scared. so I kind of get into the mind of that a little bit. That was an interesting experience. And yeah, it was interesting to see how Americans are perceived totally differently in different countries. Like Spain, they're seen as kind of traitors to the Spanish Republic because we supported Franco, who's a fascist. In Germany, we freed the Germans from the fascists, so there were the heroes. French didn't really like us because we stole their empire away as far as French-speaking dominated Europe, and now it's kind of English-speaking. So French resent you a little bit, kind of neutral scene. You went to Poland and we were like the total heroes, so completely different scene just in a couple thousand miles, right? And it's completely mind-blowing. So it's really interesting. If you have those experiences, it really carries with you, and you can see how true it serves as a real strength if you're going to develop characters like Tiffany has. And you see that, I think, the high quality in her comedy and her versatility in playing as an actress. So overall, I think it's a formulaic plot. Romantic comedies tend to follow these really corny plot lines, so it's nothing different than what you expect. It's really kind of reliant if the comedy works. I think the comedy works okay. The love story is okay. So yeah, it's a decent, fun movie. I don't think I'd watch it more than once, but it's okay, decent. So hope you guys like it. Give me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe below. And see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.